Hello, everyone. Good morning. Welcome back to A Fictional Escapist. My name is Kris, and today we are joined by Shayla Morgansen, the author of Mythos Unbound. We're going to throw straight over to you, Shayla. Do you want to introduce yourself and tell us what you've been working on and what your works are?
Hi, yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me here today, Kris. I'm Shayla. I'm the author of Mythos Unbound and also the YA urban fantasy series, the Elmstone Saga. I'm an educator. I work in the Masters of Editing and Publishing program at the university where I'm currently undertaking my PhD in publishing and fandom studies. So Mythos Unbound is the first book in my new adult urban fantasy / horror series, the Shadowkin Chronicles, which is very much informed by my media fandom research, particularly the fandoms that I really engage with myself, like X-Files, Supernatural, Grimm, and Dexter.
Cool, thank you. Now, Mythos Unbound, I've had the pleasure of reading this one. It's currently in a Kickstarter right now. We're just over the halfway mark in the Kickstarter. Can you give the audience an elevator pitch for the book itself?
Yeah, so it's, as I said, it's first in series urban fantasy horror about a brother monster hunter and a sister FBI profiler who end up on the same case, chasing a killer, and they're both convinced that it's their own kind of monster. So while they're both trying to move forward with the case and in their investigation, they're also both trying to edge the other person out for their own protection. Because for Evie, this is a really scary reality that there are human monsters walking among us pretending to be normal people who are serial killers, and that's her job to find them. But for Finn, the reality is that he sees real monsters, Lamia and ghoul and vampires hidden amongst us, glamoured to look like the rest of us. And for him, letting her into that world would be quite catastrophic to his carefully constructed reality. So that's the tension point in the series and what is set up in this first book when Evie's forced to consult with Finn and bring him in on a case because of some folklorish elements to a really gruesome case. And then that sets us up for kind of ongoing monster of the week setups for future books.
I had a lot of fun with this one, but I have to ask you, and this question is not scripted. How do you pronounce Evie's actual name?
It's Evelyn.
Ava. Okay, I was close in my brain going through.
I
Um,
I feel like my name is very easy to pronounce. Like if you have a go at it, you kind of can't get it wrong. Also, I would think, because I have spent my life correcting people and pronouncing my name for people, and then once I do, they're like, "Oh, I don't know what I thought it was going to be," because that's exactly what it says, isn't it? And so I kind of included that as a quirk for one of my characters. There are a lot of people out there who have to articulate their names for other people. And Evelyn's name is a traditional Irish name that has a lot of letters that aren't used or pronounced in Western names. So
I love that, and I feel that because people trying to pronounce my Italian surname, it's so we get many variations of it as it comes through. Good morning, Jace. Thank you for joining us here this morning. One of the loyal street team coming through to say hello this morning. Now, I had the pleasure of reading this one as an arc, as I said before, and something that I really liked was this book reads like an urban fantasy show. So you were saying before you've got that monster of the week element there. Given the comp titles that you've sort of chosen and that previous experience with studying fandoms, was this your intention or how did it come to be?
I think so. I had kind of come from two places in my writing journey. So one of those places is that I had previously written my Elmstone Saga, which is 5 books currently, with one more still to come out next year. and they are thick tomes of YA urban fantasy, and I wrote them in the style that I thought was kind of important to stick to when I was quite a young writer. And then because I had set up that sort of style um, early on in the series, I kind of had to stick with that. And the other place that I've kind of come from in my writing is that I've always been a big media fan. I regularly re-binge all my favorite like sci-fi and urban fantasy television series. I love long form media and what you can do with the characters in that, and the pace and the tension. And often when I read an urban fantasy book, that's not the experience that I have, and perhaps I just haven't found um, those that are. But I love that medium, and I love what it does to you emotionally when you get emotionally engaged with um, like an episode of Supernatural, or when you sit down and watch a season of Dexter, or any of these other shows that I love. And so with this series, I did make a few deliberate decisions around the writing style. Um, one of the decisions that I made was about the, the pace and the size of the cast, and how having a much smaller cast than what I did in my previous work has allowed me to move the story a lot quicker. And thinking about a show like Supernatural, yes, there are hundreds of names that come up if you look up like list of characters on the fandom wiki, but really we're following Sam and Dean, and sometimes we'll have Castiel, and sometimes we'll have Bobby, and then there are other characters that kind of come and go across the time. And so we have these like tiers of characters, but we're really focusing like zoomed in on those first few those core characters, and that allows us to move quite fast. So yes, there were some deliberate choices made that were influenced by kind of sitting around watching 45-minute episodes and then deconstructing them for an hour and a half. um, that kind of experience of thinking too hard about the media that I love.
I love that, and it's so true because I read a lot of epic fantasy, and like when you've got 100 characters to try and like keep track of in book one, it's just one book of just all set up. Whereas because you've got that sort of succinct characters or amount of characters in Mythos Unbound, you do get to, I guess, sit with them and them alone a lot more and sort of get a real feel for who they are and how they operate, particularly with their brother and sister dynamic, Evie and Finn, which is something that I really liked about the story. It's probably one of my favorite elements was just their dynamic, and they've obviously got quite a complicated relationship with the father, which I won't go into for spoiler reasons. But what was the inspiration between the duo that are quite close knit and also the complicated family dynamic?
Um, a few things, I suppose. My when I was saying before, like that my writing is kind of trying to come from two places. One is my previous novels, and then the other has been fandom engagement in media. I've definitely written my fair share of fan fiction in my teens and in my 20s in particular, when I was kind of building elements of my writing that I really wanted to play with, and it was a really valuable playground to just focus in on particular skills. And something that I found uh, that I was very skilled at, and that I got great feedback on, and that really captured readers in both of those settings, was platonic, but still incredibly intense and interdependent male-female bonds, or characters that present as a brother and a sister, and that dynamic. Even though like I love a romance, like most people, like I love love, but very few worlds that I like to engage in handle romance in a way that doesn't overshadow that, or so I tend to actually read romance all on its own, and then look for speculative fiction that doesn't have it or keeps it quite low. So I wanted to write a pair of characters who were intensely interdependent, perhaps to a point of not even really being very healthy about it, but who will ride or die, have each other's back, but which I can put in situations where their relationship can really be on the line, but we're not really at as much of a risk of losing it as we would be if my characters were a romantic pair. If I put a romantic pair through some of the things I've put Finn and Evie through, or in my previous series, Renatus and Aristea are a similar dynamic. And what they can go through and still come out the other side stronger than ever, I maybe wouldn't be able to do if I added a romantic element to that. So that was part of the kind of the reasoning behind deciding to make the main characters siblings. Also, what I can do with the power dynamic with that as well, that they have this long history, and duos from media that I love, like Sam and Dean, Mulder and Scully, and Deb and Dexter, being big influences on the dynamic that I wanted to create.
Cool. We've got another hello from the chat. Hello, Shona. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome in. Now, you shared some information in the Street Team chat, and I don't think the world has yet to know some of the more quirky factors that you have for your characters there. So what is something quirky that you can tell us about some of the main characters that hasn't really been explored in book one, but may come out in future installments?
Okay, so they're both really like chalk and cheese, Finn and Evie. They've grown up together, but we know from early on that they have both been adopted. They're in a very ragtag kind of family that they know is very unconventional, and they're very fiercely protective of that, of what they have. Finn he's kind of the nice guy. Everybody wants to be friends with Finn. They'll think he's a bit soft and a bit sweet. And he presents as even more harmless because we find out quite early on that he is claustrophobic. He has some demons that he carries around. But what people don't know about him is that when he's off the page and out of sight, he's ruthlessly executing monsters and burying them and hiding these horrific things in the back of his car that he has to get somewhere and hide. So that's something that is explored in the first book, but sort of more, I guess, more subtle is Evie. She's more of a bit of a like hard pill to swallow for a lot of people. She's quite blunt. She's got a little bit of like BBC Sherlock going on. Like she's a bit too smart for her own good, and will say tactless things and then be like, "Well, it's true, isn't it? What's the problem?"
I've known people like that in my real life as well. I feel like I am one of them.
So Evie is the kind of the character that we're going to unpack more slowly across the series, partly because that's the way the narrative works, but also because of who she is. She's much more of a closed book than what Finn is. And she does have some little quirks, like she can make anything grow. So we know she's an avid gardener. She has always, tended to the family garden and prepared, and is a great cook as a result. She's always looked after vegetables, but a kind of sort of side part to Evie is, despite the way that she comes across a very ice queen, she has a greenhouse at home and a real green thumb. She can make anything grow, even out of season. And it seems a little bit like irrelevant to begin with, but is going to come back around later on.
I mean, if Finn stops burying things in the yard, that might help her.
Yes, maybe that is
Maybe
composting
it's
in a
part
way
of
that
it.
was really helping her.
Now you mentioned before that we have like quite a tight knit cast in this first book, and that there's opportunity for it to grow, sort of like those fandoms that we were speaking about, like Supernatural earlier. I was really fascinated personally with one character in particular, and that was Xander, who kept sort of popping up at these little moments. So there was a scene at the beginning of the book, and then his name would sort of come up with the Shadowkin, so the namesake of the series. And I'm just curious if we're going to see more of him in future installments. Is Xander going to become a bigger part that we currently see him in book one? Without
He will
spoilers.
he will stick around. So he's part of the kind of the fabric of the story. So both Finn and Evie, thinking structurally about the book, have got two offsider characters that they can bounce off when they're not on the page together. So for Evie, those two characters are her FBI partner Grady, and he's sort of like the person that kind of peps her up and keeps her like under his wing and helps her move forward. And then as a more antagonistic character, she has her supervisor, Agent Sutton. And then for Finn, even though Artie is he's the dad of both of the characters, he has very different relationships with each of the adult children. And he's very much more, Finn's confidant because of where the line is drawn in the sand between who knows about what. And Finn's other person that he can kind of bounce ideas off is this student in his first year course, Xander, who is very, very interested in the Shadowkin world, but from an academic perspective, in that he is a game designer by hobby, and he has kind of come across a lot of this information, but considers it in a fictional sense. And so it gives Finn this outlet to be able to talk about about his reality as if he's talking about about games and about literature. So it kind of helps me to like unisolate my character, who's otherwise just floating in the void of the story. I would like to kind of slowly like break down some boundaries of what people know and don't know over time. But it would be a slow process. I've got 5 books planned at this stage to bring the arc that's set up in the first book to a resolution, and then the potential with the new dynamic that would set up to continue to write in the series.
That's one of the things I really like about urban fantasy as well, is there's you don't have to have a stop point, particularly when you've got that sort of monster of the week vibe that you're going for, but the relationships all sort of build on one another to potentially just go on forever. I mean, we saw that in how many seasons of Supernatural? We got it at the end of the day. But I really like those characters there. And I also like that throw. A lot of writers will draw on their own experiences and their own sort of world inspiration. So having that academic throw, sort of knowing you as an academic, was really like, I don't know, comforting for me to read as a reader, being like, oh, putting that little academia bit in there, with Finn being the lecturer and also Xander being that student who just wants to know more, because I was a teacher's pet back in the day. We don't have to go into that though. So you have a lot of comp titles, and obviously doing a lot of research in fandoms, you've got a lot of exposure to media, particularly of urban fantasy. And I think we're similar ages, so we sort of grew up around the same media at the time, like Charm, Buffy, Grimm, Supernatural, all that sort of stuff as we were growing up. So what are your 3 favorite comp titles? Because there are quite a few for these, and how have they influenced the story?
Well, I have to say X-Files, because that's actually what my PhD is in. And there are a lot of ways that
of that theme song to this
yes,
day.
we definitely are the same age then. Because anyone sort of within like 5 years of like my birth date who grew up in Australia has a distinct memory of falling asleep as a child or trying to fall asleep
Yeah,
on
no,
time
can't
so that
sleep
you couldn't hear your parents playing that theme
watching
song
that.
because you knew it was so
100%.
scary.
Yeah. It haunts me to this
Yes.
day,
So
and occasionally I still hear it as an earworm. I'm like, ugh.
it's so good. It was such
Yeah.
an iconic piece of music, and yeah, it's just one of those themes. Like once you start watching the series, like you never hit skip theme because that's what's going to get you
You
in
have
that
to.
mood, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, definitely X Files. I didn't watch it as a child for those exact reasons. I was probably just that little bit too young. Maybe toward the end of its original airing when it was kind of hitting like the 2000, 2001. I probably would have been I probably would have loved it. But I also think if I tuned in at that point, it probably wouldn't have appealed as much because the show does change up kind of after, I think about the year 2000. I think it would have it changed up the cast and some of the direction. So I don't know that it would have been as compelling, even to preteen me. But I as an adult watched Dexter, and that's been a big influence on this. And it was watching that show and then getting involved in the fandom when the show started to take a direction that I felt very strongly about. I sought out the fan fiction and made some friends and wrote what was supposed to be just like a one shot. It was supposed to be like 5,000 words just to get it out of my system. Like, this is what they really needed to do in this episode. It wouldn't have been that hard. What if we just did this? And then 18 months, 53 chapters, and 600,000 words later, I have this mega piece of work that is like uh, significant to the fandom and has like changed my like writing direction and shown me just how much work I can actually do in that time. And during my time working, I say working, it was a lot of work to produce that fan fiction. During my time engaging with that fandom, I encountered quite a few people um, who had moved into Dexter from the X Files fandom, and they encouraged me to go and watch the X Files, basically because of there are quite a few similar themes, just narratively, um, the the crime solving dynamic, um, and the case files, but also the male female lead who are opposites in a lot of ways, and then that push and pull of his beliefs versus her beliefs, and then trying to come together to try and move forward. Um, and yeah, I watched like 3 episodes and then was just hooked and just burned through a lot of it. And then the movies, and then all the reboots, and then suddenly I needed to choose a kind of a case study for my PhD, like a fandom case study, and it just seemed that's where I was at the time. So, and then that's kind of where my mind has stayed in a lot of ways, which is why the story has leaned quite heavily on those two. And then as for a third favorite, um, I suppose Supernatural is probably the one that has uh, the world that Mythos Unbound inhabits is most similar to Supernatural, like the monsters and the equal weighting of mythologies from different cultures and different places, that we're not just chasing down Norse mythology or just you know Christian mythology with the angels, and we've got bits and pieces from all over the world, and also like some crossovers between them where um, a monster from this culture looks very similar to the one from this culture. So why could they not just be the same thing, just told in different stories and given different names at different times in history? If these monsters all exist simultaneously and have been moving around, living their own lives, with their own Sorry, my cat is trying to take my chair, and I'm just trying to push back a little
I
bit.
can see the
Distracting
tail
my
coming
chair.
up behind your shoulders.
We're just like negotiating quietly here. Yeah. But then, yeah, all the other comp titles that I kind of went through, like, there are similarities with like Witcher. That wasn't one that came straight to my mind, but my husband is a bit more of a
I just thought
gamer.
of it then when
Yeah,
you were talking. I was like, yeah, Witcher vibes. Yeah.
yeah, there is a little bit. Finn is not as impressive as Henry Cavill, I'll admit. But
Not many people are.
that's right. Who even could be?
Who can compare to Henry Cavill? Maybe the guy who plays Reacher, because them sitting next to each other, they're just
Oh,
ridiculously big.
yeah,
They're
you'd
just
get out of the
broad
way.
dudes. Yeah. Oh, sorry, sirs. Bye. All right, I'm gonna make you reach behind you because I want to start talking Kickstarter. So your Kickstarter at
Yes.
the moment for this beautiful paperback with the sprayed edges. So I'm gonna get Shayla to hold it up. Look at that! Look at that shine on the. I love the little like the stars on the front cover that in the foiling. They're just so
Yeah.
beautiful. So I've backed this one at the end of this interview. I hope you'll go and back it too. The link will be in the description box down below. So it seems to be going quite well. So you made the minimum payment or whatever it is, the target within like 12 hours or something like that. So how have you found the process now? We're a little bit over halfway. Sort of a real talk on Kickstarters in your experience.
Yeah, so you're right. Mythos Unbound is currently available on Kickstarter. I probably should have said that in my introduction. But this is my first time doing a Kickstarter to crowdfund for a book. In the past, I've always done print on demand and have just kind of paid it all up front and then done the work of approaching bookstores, promoting, doing signings, and then like to pay it off afterwards. So this time I wanted to do something a bit more special. I didn't want to just write, release, hope for the best. I wanted to find some new audiences, and I wanted to be able to do a special print run, which requires me to print a lot more books to be able to get like these special features at a price that is viable for me and for people to buy. So my main impression of Kickstarters is there is a lot more work than what I had bargained for. That is the thing that mostly has stuck out in my head. It was months of setup and a lot of like planning and researching things that I normally would have just gone, I'll do that later. But it all needed to be done beforehand so that I could share the concept, have an actual product ready to be able to show people in order to get them to back the project and to be able to support something that actually exists. So I did feel a lot like I was doing live action versions of the assignments that I set for my master's students in the publishing program. I had to do my own requests for quotations, and I had to do all of the work out all the specifications that normally I've had like other people kind of support me through. So it was it's been a very, very steep learning curve, but it has, as far as I can see, has been really successful. I feel really good about it. It has forced me to kind of upskill really quickly and to be able to, I suppose, do all the things that I set out. The reason that I did the master's in publishing in the first place was to learn all these things, and I have kind of learnt them all in theory, but not actually put them into action to this level before. It's done really well. So it met the first goal within 44 minutes, which is great because there were 20 days for it to reach that. And then, as you said, after 12 hours, we had enough funds committed to be able to commit to having the sprayed edges. And since then, we've also passed several other stretch goals where we add more like goodies into the pot for people who are backing it to be able to access. So now we have recipe cards from Evie's cookbook, and we have holographic stickers of both characters. And the next stretch goal that I'm really hoping we can meet because I'm really excited about this one, is a solo RPG campaign book of like a prequel mission that Finn undertakes about a year before this book kicks off. So I'm really hoping we can get to that.
That's really cool.
Really cool.
That's a neat perk. And you've also got some candles. Do you have any there you can show off
I
behind
just
you?
wish, it's such a pain that this medium, no one has done the work of adding like an olfactory feature to YouTube, because yes, I have candles. There's one for each character, and they come in the
They're so
book box.
glittery and fun.
They're so glittery and fun, but they also smell incredible. And I just wish that I could share that with you right now because they smell so good.
Let's start burning one. Get the cat out of the room. Just in case. Okay, are they all candles behind you as well on the bookshelf that you've
I
got
do
there?
like my candles. Yeah, so the candles up there are of various and many, and all smell really good as well.
Cool. So you've sort of answered my next question, which was the perks for backers, and I like the candles, so I made you show them off as we're in there. But there's a few different tiers that you can go and back in the Kickstarter. Do you want to talk a little bit about the box and what you get for the limited edition sort of box set that you can
Yes.
back?
So the book box is kind of the top sort of tier that you can get. We have an ebook, with some digital art, and then the paperback on its own, or you can get the paperback with these. These are very cool. I commissioned an artist to create pages from Finn's bestiary, and these are on vellum, and they fit perfectly inside the book. So as you're reading, you just come across field sketches of the monsters that Finn has seen, and you can also remove them if you like, but they store inside the book. So that is one of the tiers, to have the book include those, but they also come inside the book box. So for the book box, you kind of get everything. You get the paperback, you get the vellum inserts, you get the candle. So it comes with one or the other. It's just a lucky dip, but you can add on the second one if you just can't choose. So Finn's candle, the one I delightfully sniffed before, is toasted marshmallows with campfire smoke. Finn lives off junk food. He's an academic. He's trying to finish his PhD, and then when he gets 5 minutes, there's a monster like at the edge of his mental radar, coming to get him. So then he has to pack up all his stuff and go and chase it down and get rid of it before it gets him. So he doesn't have time to make anything healthy, and his sister is just disgusted by what she
Vast
finds.
contrast to Evie, though.
Yes. Evie's body is a temple, and she would not put that junk in it. So Evie's candle is Stake Out with Evie, and she has got black tea and lychees, which is a bit of an exotic twist, which I think suits this character
Like
really
sharp
well.
and sweet at the same time.
Yes. Yeah.
That foresight into unpacking Evie a little bit more in future books.
Yes.
Yeah.
She's also probably the only person who can just like plant a lychee seed on her like windowsill garden and just have it just grow in the middle of winter and turn into a tree that she can then transplant elsewhere and then just be having fruit by the end of the year. So she'd be able to do that.
I need Evie to come and teach me how to keep orchids alive, because I cannot for the life of me.
I planted my first garden about 2 weeks ago. We planted a vegetable garden out the side for my toddler to be able to, have somewhere to dig. And I've always loved the idea of like growing up in a home where you like grow your own food. I've just never had that home. I've never been that person. And I thought, well, this is my time to start. So we built a garden. I built a garden, and I planted everything while she just ran around and ignored me. And she's pretty much ignored it ever since. So we'll see. We'll see how long it stays alive.
I went to Bunnings and bought a pot yesterday in hopes of repotting a plant that desperately needs a new home. And I'm just hoping I don't kill it in the meantime.
That is progress. I feel like you're halfway there.
Yeah, I bought the pot. It's sitting there with the potting mix. It'll happen today. That's my job after the interview this morning.
Yeah.
With the Kickstarter, do you think there? Because I see a lot of indie authors and self-pub authors sort of go down this route since Brandon Sanderson really threw a light on Kickstarters and what they can do for authors. It's become quite a big trend as a way to
Mm.
get your book out there because it promotes especially in those first 48 hours. Kickstarter will actively promote, and also to give yourself, I guess, some form of guaranteed income for the book should you meet a goal. So as an indie author, do you find that there is a benefit in running a Kickstarter, and what drew you to this route of, I guess, marketing or going forward
Yeah.
with a book release?
So I had a couple of kind of signs in my life where I thought like, okay, I'll check that out. And then yes, there was Brandon Sanderson. An author that I really admire is Kevin J. Anderson, and he's run multiple Kickstarters for new releases of his, and also his back catalogue as well. So those were kind of on my radar. And then a friend of mine who writes solo RPG campaign books had a really successful campaign that I was following along. And there's really something motivating and inspiring about someone that having that success, because we can all say as writers like, well, Brandon Sanderson did it, but there's no like, well, therefore I can too. Like, because there are a lot of factors that make that make that a really different situation and not a fair comparison. um, but when it's someone that who lives in the same city as you, and has a lot of other comparable similarities, it's like, well, actually, yeah, I could give this a try. So this has really been an experiment for me. I'm pretty fortunate to be in a situation where I can kind of take a bit of a risk and experiment with my sort of production processes. But also, if you're not, it would be quite scary um, going into publishing without any sort of other stability. I think would be a very scary risk to take, because it's not a stable landscape, and there is a very high potential for this to just be an expensive hobby for quite a long time before you're able to turn it around into something that is actually an income. Um, so
Because you
yeah,
have
I
to
think
order
that
quite a lot of books, don't you? When you're doing a Kickstarter or for the
actually,
print run that you want, there's quite a number that you need to actually order
yes,
from the offset, regardless of what happens.
I think it makes a difference that I'm in Australia, because I've joined a few like Facebook groups, support groups for authors um, who are using Kickstarter, and they've been fantastic resources. But a lot of the information that gets shared in there around like pricing and turnaround times is US or UK based. And once you add shipping to Australia into the equation, you are now waiting twice as long and paying twice as much. And then those prices, have to be incorporated into the unit price that you're working from in your budget, and that then needs to be carried over to what you're selling it as. You still need to be, getting that back and making a profit in order for you to be able to be moving forward um, as an author, as a creative who wants to keep creating. So being in Australia, there were fewer options available to me that were still financially viable, because I could make this book and have a shorter print run if I used a print on demand sort of specialist option that's Australian based. Um, but I couldn't do it at this price. And then, therefore, who does that exclude in terms of my readership, my audience? Who, pardon me, could I still have had the success that I've had if I had committed to fewer books at a higher price point. I don't know. My gut says probably not. So I'm happy
It's
to buy the extra books.
yeah, it's a good way, and like for the Kickstarters that I backed as well, it seems like it's a good way to have those affordable books for people because you are doing that bigger print run. Like I say this as an unbiased party, but if you do go ahead and back Shayla's Kickstarter, it is really fairly priced. Whereas if you go and buy an indie book on, say, something like Amazon, which unfortunately, even though we don't like supporting the big conglomerates, is a way that a lot of people can go ahead and purchase indie books, but they're 2-3 times more expensive than backing someone on a Kickstarter and helping them fulfill their dreams. So I personally like it as a reader to try and support the author, and also more of that share going to you as an author. It's a bit of a shout out to Kickstarter, big supporter
Yeah.
of the platform and what they do. Now, the last few questions I have for you, Shayla, are more about your writing process and some of the inspirations that come from your writer. I have quite a few authors that come to the channel and watch these videos as well. So sort of, I guess, an information session because everyone's a little bit different. So you have written and are in the process of writing another series at the moment, YA urban fantasy, for a younger audience. What was the motivation behind sort of switching gears into the adult world?
Um, Probably just growing up and getting old.
Happens to the
My
best of us.
I know, I know. I'm waiting for them to come out with a way around it. My YA series, I started writing when I was 16, and I published the first book when I was 24. And the main character of that is a 17-year-old girl. She turns 18 in the through in the progression of the series, and her partner in this is Renatus, who's her mentor, and they are bonded early on in the series in a way that allows them to communicate telepathically, and their traits and powers begin to also like blend across their bond, so that she inherits some of his traits, and he becomes more impulsive like what she was, and until they kind of solidify their identities. And this character of Renatus, being a 16-year-old when I started writing this, I wanted him to be very grown up. So I made him 22 so that he would be very old and very grown up. And then I got to
Oh, that
22.
hurts. That hurts in the mid-30s.
And I passed 22. And I published the books at 24, like, oh, we probably need to, like, as the series goes along, like, he needs to make some mistakes and not be so grown up. And, one of the kind of the themes of the books is both the characters kind of realizing that they had a lot of growing up to do. Um, and I've enjoyed doing that, but I'm now so much older than those characters. And because the work is still YA, I need to still, for this final book, I still have to keep the themes YA, or even at the upper end of YA as much as possible. I still have to make decisions for these characters as 18-year-old and 22-year-olds. Yes, they've been through a lot more than the average 18 or 22-year-old, but that's becoming harder and harder to do. So once this book is finished, once the final book in the series is finished, even though I really adore these characters, they are my children, I was looking forward to an opportunity to switch gears, and, as you say, and to work with characters who have lives more similar to mine, who are professionals in their 30s or late 20s, who have studied and have worked really hard for the role that they're in, and now have to balance that with the other kind of elements of grown-up life. So Evie and Finn have their careers, they have completed study, they have an aging dad with health problems that they are taking care of on the side, and navigating what that looks like now for their family. And that just resonates a lot more with me in the stage of my life that I'm at right now.
And how did you find writing the two series simultaneously? Like having, even if you weren't writing the YA at the time, but having to think, I've got these characters over here in a younger dynamic, and I've got these characters over here in a more adult dynamic. How did you, I guess, work it in your brain so that they were able to be separated?
Um, it wasn't that difficult for me. I wear a lot of hats, and I regularly read multiple books at a time as a result, because my brain has many tracks and I need to jump between them um, very quickly. So in any given day, I can be writing one of my books and working on my thesis, which is an entirely different, creative process, writing process, and running Zoom sessions to support other people through their theses or their research, and um, taking my toddler to the library and just being in mum mode, and then doing a board meeting in the role of um, I'm a director on a board for a small school. I have lots of things already that require totally different versions of Shayla that need to be kind of segregated. So when I open the document and I read the last like 2 paragraphs of what I was previously writing, I just kind of naturally slip into that frame of mind. So um, the Elmstone series is something that's a really helpful flag for me, is that Elmstone series is written in past tense, and Mythos Unbound and its sequels are written in present tense. So already I can sort of feel the difference. Elmstone Saga also has a bit more of a not literary feel, but the prose is a bit more kind of loaded down with there's a lot more kind of characters, and the lead character is very introspective. She's a teenage empath, so she's feeling everything, worrying about everything. She struggles with anxiety. Then I open up Mythos Unbound or one of its sequels, and I have these characters who are much more sure of themselves. And
He was just giving it to someone straight.
she is.
Yeah.
She is. Um, and Finn has just like pleasantly deflected and kept everyone on side. They don't really struggle with those same issues, and so the prose as a result is a lot more minimalist than what my previous writing style has been like. So it's as soon as I open it, I just see that and just continue it.
And have you found that there's much of a difference between prepping for either world that you're in terms of research and inspiration between the YA and the Mythos Unbound?
Um, not now that I've written them. I worked a fair bit more on planning the series and the books themselves with Shadowkin Chronicles, with the second series. Um, in the kind of intervening years while I've been um, at home with my toddler, while she's been a baby, I've been working on some ghost writing for a major publisher, and one of the processes of that is to submit like a full plan of what's happening in every chapter, which previously I had not done. I was very much, let's just see what happens today. And I would always have like milestones that I was heading for in the Elmstone books, but if those took 3 chapters to meet or 1 chapter to meet, it didn't really worry me. And then I would do a lot of reworking in the edit to reshape it. The ghostwriting work taught me to do that thinking beforehand and submit what I was planning to write, and then just to sit down and just smash it out. And then the edit to it was uh, so much more reduced in workload. Like there was no real need for structural changes, and that was my experience with Mythos Unbound as well, because I have kind of already done that planning work, and it does help me to stay a bit more focused in the writing of it, because I don't have those big blocks of time that I had when I was an undergraduate, and we had like the whole 3 months of summer just off from study. Now I'm lucky if I get
So you
like
just
3
told
hours
everyone how
off.
many hats you have to wear on any given day. So that's that's not a lot of time to fit in your writing, but that's really cool. One of my questions I ask everyone is plotter or pantser, but just
I think
that
I'm just in
answer that you've
between.
given, yeah,
Yeah.
just a good mix of both. Um, so I do want to end on some writing advice for those of us who want to become authors or are actively working on being an author who may be in a similar life situation to someone who is wearing a lot of hats. How do you personally find the time? Do you have a routine or a structure? Where does your writing fit into your schedule?
I have had to learn to um, just take what you can get. um, because we might plan in our little family, we might plan for me to have um, an hour this afternoon, where I can sit and just focus on my writing. And in the past, I would have thought like, well, that's really just not enough time. Um, I really need like half a day to really get my head into this game. And ideally, I would still love that, but the reality is that that hour is something I may not even get. Like I may sit down at my computer and then the toddler will just realize from the other end of the house that I'm not there and just melt down and come racing down the hallway for me. And then the kind of the glass house I built around myself to try and focus in on my writing is gone anyway. So if there was 10 minutes that I got before she noticed, I have to use that 10 minutes.
It's interesting because I'm writing myself at the moment. My first book's about to go off to a dev editor, and I always thought sort of similarly. Let's set out a day to write. But my brain just doesn't work that way. So I wrote this book in 30-minute sprints, 4 days a week, because that's all I could do consistently. I can't imagine what it would be like to have a little human being being like, hang on, that parent that I had half an hour ago has now disappeared. Where have they gone? So yeah, it's interesting to me to always talk to authors about how you find your time, because the process is different. You'll have people like, say, Ryan Carhills of the world who set a word count each day and they will not go to bed until that word count has been reached. And there are some of us who just cannot sit still for
Mm.
multiple hours at a time. So it's just interesting to get that experience. So thank you for sharing. What last one? I promise, and I ask everyone. Every
Mhm.
single author hates this question, but I ask it anyway. And that is, what's next for you, and what's next for the Shadowkin Chronicles?
I don't think we've got time for me for what's next because there's always a massive list. Um, so what's next is I need to finish this Kickstarter. There's still 8 days left for people to pledge and commit to this first book, to this first print run. Then I need to get the second book finished, polished, and sent to my advanced readers. And I need to finish both the sixth book in my original series, and I need to finish my PhD so that it's no longer just sitting there
Hanging over your head.
weighing on
Yeah.
my time. Yeah, 'cause it's been a big undertaking, and it has taken a lot longer than what it was sold to me as. I don't want to not do it at this point. Um, I don't want my daughter, in particular, to grow up thinking that I gave something up just after I had her, and that there was, she made things too hard. So there's kind of that incentive now for me to just get it done.
How many years have you put into this PhD thus far?
6, and it's supposed to be done at the end
Gotta
of
sit
next
through.
year, so it will have been
No
7
pressure,
years.
Shayla.
I know. But I've said it now
Casually, two
on
books and a
live
PhD. Yeah,
video.
you're live now. So it's committed to the internet where everything is true and holy. So
That's right.
it's there to go. Yeah. All right. I've just checked the Kickstarter page. So Mythos Unbound is currently 528% backed. How much more do we need to get the RPG one shot? Because I'm invested.
I
Um,
know. I've got it set as a stretch goal for $5,000 Australian, which I really hope we can
We've
get to.
Yep, so we've got about 850 to go. So team, if
Come
you're
on,
watching
people.
this, jump in that description box. Kickstarter link is there. We want the one-shot RPG story for Finn because I need it so selfishly. Please go and pledge for me. It's
So all
down
you have to do is
below.
buy the ebook.
Yeah, that's. I think it's $7 AUD as the first one. So all the US
Yep,
folk and the UK folk watching this, it's like nothing. It's a couple bucks. Come on now,
that's right.
to go and get the ebook. But thank you so much, Shayla, for joining me today. It's been lovely to have you on and chat all things Mythos Unbound. Is there anything that you want to leave the audience with today?
No, I really do just want to say, though, thank you so much for having me on your channel today, Kris. It has been a real privilege and also just really lovely to meet you in real time. I feel like I've known about you for a really long time, then we've talked online, so it's lovely
Years
to
now, yeah.
years.
For those of you who don't know, Shayla works in the academic world, and my wife Rachel got a lot of help from Shayla doing her thesis. So we've spoken on and off for the last, I'd say, a year or two, and finally got to meet
Yeah.
IRL today, which has been lovely. But all right, thank you, and thank you to the audience as well for joining us today. Don't forget to check out Mythos Unbound, and if you want to know more about Shayla, the link to her website is also down below, so you can go ahead and check out the other series as well. But we will leave you there. Thank you so much for joining and enjoy the rest of your days.
Thank you.
Bye.